Okay, folks, here we go. I'm recording this just to have it. So if Zoom doesn't work for me this evening. So I'm going to get started and away we go. Oops, that's not what I want. I can't talk and do this as well. Okay, so here we go. I am going over one of the first things that you need to do for this semester, and that is to come up as a group with your exhibition title. So this short lecture will talk us through the reasons why you need to title your exhibition, give you some examples, and then hopefully get you started coming up with a really great title for your exhibition. So if we were to read, and I will have it up on Canvas if you want to, a recent recent article from Art News about exhibition titles, we would find out the amount of time and importance that museum curators, directors, as well as gallery directors put into coming up with the title for their exhibition. As David Rubin, the curator of contemporary art at the San Antonio Museum, says, the title is your initial marketing hook. So think of it that way. The title is what will get people's attention. Now, Rubin goes on to say, though, that it's also an educational device and helps people to understand the context, the importance of the exhibition, and why they would come to it. So we're going to look at a few examples, and hopefully you can start to think about, again, the title of your show, how it tells us about you as a group and your collective experiences, and what is different or unique about you than every other BFA show that's happened historically and at other locations, or will happen at different times. So here are a few great examples of some exhibition titles. The first two, from the Guggenheim Museum and the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, are both abstract art exhibitions, but the titles do very, very different things in how they communicate about the art within the exhibition and tell us what's happening. So Off the Grid, don't you just love that title? Refers to a lot of different things. Let's just take the phrase and how we would use it outside of the art world. Off the grid, to me, immediately refers to someone who is bucking standards and is living in a non-typical way. So off the grid, to me, may mean someone who has made a decision to live off the power grid and do things by their own devices. So I think there's a lot of element to that, to this exhibition, and how it shows artists kind of also bucking standards and doing things in their own way. But also the word grid refers to how many of the artists in the exhibition did work with and play with the formal device of grids within their work. So there's a dual meaning that's very engaging here in the selection of Off the Grid. It's also catchy, right? Off the Grid. The other title, Sensory Poetics, Collecting Abstraction, does something extremely different. It kind of gets our attention in a very different way. The word sensory clues us into how we as the viewers, and maybe the artists as well, engage their physical senses in the making process. So we can imagine right away that maybe this will be an exhibition that will be more haptic in nature, something that the artist's touch will come through very clearly. And then the word poetics also gives us another softer, more elegant understanding. So very different, two very different exhibitions, both on abstraction, but very different titles that clue us into that. Now, the third one, this is one of my favorites, WAC, Art and the Feminist Revolution. So first, let me say, it is pretty common for exhibition titles to have a colon, or to even have sort of a subtitle to clue us in. And that's what's happening here. WAC is a very powerful word. And so we needed to follow that up with something to tell us what the WAC is about, right? And so the exhibition, Art and the Feminist Revolution, was very much about artists during the 60s and 70s creating work that was confrontational, that was very much being a whack to the standards and things that were happening. So this was a great exhibition and a very evocative, engaging title. We find something very similar with the Kara Walker exhibition that's happening right now at MoCA Jacksonville. So we know right away, because we have the artist's name, that this is a solo exhibition. And that's pretty standard. Solo exhibitions can just be the artist's name and then other information to help give us more context. Is it a show of everything that the artist's done? Is it from a specific time period? What work and things of that nature. So in this case, Kara Walker, Cut to the Quick, is a title that refers to both her process. So if you know Kara Walker's work, and I definitely hope you do, it tells us about her ways of using paper cutting within her work, but then it also the title deals and reflects the conceptual confrontational nature of her work, of how Walker has again and again played with racial stereotypes and standards in a way that makes many of her viewers, and it should, uncomfortable. So it's that cutting to the quick to remind us of things from our history and maybe things that are still happening today. So now let's look at a few examples from other Thesis 2 classes and things that they came up for both their title. And then I'm going to throw this in here. We've got a little bit more time for this, but you'll also be designing the flyer / postcard for your exhibition. So there's a little bit of both happening here. So the Spring 2020 group wanted a title that reflected on the duality of life in South Florida, of how people from the outside may see Miami as this beautiful tropical paradise where all we do is party. But for those of us living here, we might be spending more time stuck in traffic and trying to figure out how to pay the rent. So the title, and I will say there was a lot of discussion about this, that they ended up with was Grim Leisure, to kind of express that duality, what people saw and what the reality of living here is, Grim Leisure. Now, to take it a step further, they borrowed from images of Miami in the 80s with their typeface and color scheme to kind of make that point clear. So they went back thinking of Miami Vice with the pinks and the blues, even the color schemes we see at South Beach, to kind of express that quality. Now, the Fall 2020 Thesis 2 group. Now, think about what the Fall 2020 Thesis 2 group had been through. Like all of you guys, they had been through lockdown and quarantine, all of the social unrest from the summer of 2020. So their title and then their postcard imagery really reinforced that it was time for changes, and that the systems that weren't working, the standards that weren't working, and other things just needed to be reworked. So their title was Everything Must Go. And you can see that their visual imagery reflected that as well. Everything must go. So now it's your turn. So one of your assignments is to very quickly come up with a couple of ideas for what could be your exhibition title. You could use humor, you could be serious, you could be ironic, but here's the reality. Come up with a couple of things and we will, as a group, go through them and we'll come up with a title which we all feel comfortable with as a group. Okay, so there we go. Let's get started.